Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today is Saturday, and today we're having a brand new show. This is the launch, and I get a lot of questions that come across my desk, and I said, well, okay, I need to start answering these questions on the air. So today is the launch of this brand new show that we're calling From the Desk of Dr. Ron. So, the question of today is marriage the same today as in our grandparents' day? Well, unfortunately, the answer is no. Our grandparents, our matriarchs, were the foundation of our families. Now, I was very fortunate to be of an age where I remember when grandparents had foundational skills in the family. Now, what I mean by that is um, they struggled to be able to leave a legacy for future generations, which would include me. And I look at what they have done and how they did it. Many of them came up from the South to find and seek a better family for, better for their family in the future. They worked, they struggled, and they established themselves in an area that was better than where they were raised. In the South was, very rough, racist behavior, and our grandparents had to overcome that. So they established a foundation which we today should be able to stand on and carry on. Now, when our grandparents got married, it was not always a piece of cake. It was not always what you would say a situation where it was, peaches and cream, just to use as an example. They struggled, they had conflict, but yet they were determined to stay together for the family. So when they got married, whether it was an arranged marriage, whether it was a forced marriage, whether it was an agreeable marriage between the two of them, they went into this knowing that, hey, this was a lifetime commitment. So the lifetime commitment that they made was for the future of our generations to come. So I would have to say that they created a mindset, no matter what grandpa was doing, no matter what grandma was doing, they created a mindset that this is it, no matter what. Now, unusual family situations can make some things that families did not agree with always. I've got an interesting story I'm going to tell you about. My grandfather was a businessman in Chicago. He was a barber. He had a barber shop. In the barber shop, he did a lot of off-track betting, policy, things of that nature that during the 40s and 50s was common in a business like what he had. It was a community mecca. It was a center. My grandmother was a stay-at-home mom. She did hair on occasion. She was a beautician. She had the children. She stayed at home with the children. She raised the children. Well, my grandfather spent so much time away from home that my grandmother began to get a little frisky because my grandfather got a little frisky. My grandmother told me a story one day that I was like, wow, and I thought it spoke to the time and the era. My grandfather, she said, got on the bus that she was on at the front of the bus. He never looked in the back. He had on one set of clothes. He got off at the barbershop. He went to the barbershop and he changed clothes. Now, she was on the back of the bus coming from her boyfriend's house. So she was trying to get home before he did. So when he got off, she was glad. So when he got home and walked in the door, he had on a different set of clothes than what she saw him on the bus. So she said he was out there messing around. So she wasn't going to sit at home and not get hers. So she was out there messing around too. But they stayed together, even though she knew what he was on and what he was about. So the foundation was solid. Grandma was the type of person that would bring the family together for dinners. If there was something going on in the family, she would be the one to give you the wisdom in the family. She would bring together the two parties that were having difficulty and let them know that, hey, we got to stick together as a family. Okay, that's your brother, that's your sister, that's your husband, whatever the scenario, it didn't matter. She would pull them together and make sure that they stayed together as the foundation of this family. And that's what they did. So I look at the fact that my grandmother and all grandmothers used to bring us together what we used to call on Sunday dinners, where they would give us the family legacy or the history. Your great Uncle George or your great Uncle Bob used to do this, used to do that. And that's how we used to hear as young people the stories and the legacy and how rich our family stories were. Grandpa did this, and they would keep those stories alive in the family. Now, that was all part of the makeup of the marriage, because no matter what grandpa was doing and no matter what grandma was doing, they stayed together and they wrote it out. Different cultures did the same thing. Italians, Greeks, Africans, even if you go to the islands, my grandfather was from the Bahamas. And when I started going to the Bahamas, I used to see and hear stories about family members who had two sets of families on one side of the island and the other side of the island. And all of the kids knew each other so that they would make sure they wouldn't date one another. But that was family. As blended and as complex as it may sound, that was family. That was the foundation. Now, fast forward to today, marriage today, it has rules and regulations that have been developed that people will not tolerate this, they will not tolerate that. If your daddy do this, I'm not taking it. If your mama do this, I'm not taking it. And then the fabric of the family begins to separate. So marriage does not mean the same thing today as it did in our grandparents' day, because a lot of our grandparents overlooked some things for the foundation of the family. So I would say get back to where we used to be. Family is too important. We need our families to be rock solid. We need our families to be strong. We need our families to be able to overcome adversity. Well, if you're on an unstable foundation, you cannot overcome because you don't know how to overcome. I'm a grandparent now. I have grandchildren. And I would like to impart into my grandchildren the strength, the wisdom, the knowledge that was imparted into me by my grandparents. I can remember when I was 30 years old and I was in my second marriage. I had two children. I went to the island of the Bahamas, Harbor Island, and I went there because I was struggling in life, you know. And I said, well, my grandfather's close to 100 years old, and he was married. And I said, well, let me go sit down at his feet and try and get some wisdom and understand what it is that he would be able to tell me, being able to survive marriage for 50 plus years. And it was interesting, the words that came out of his mouth at that time. He said, boy, study the Bible. I said, huh? He said, yeah. He said, study the Bible. I was like so disappointed because I didn't understand what was in the Bible had to do with him giving me the keys to the kingdom of knowledge to be able to stay married and to be able to understand the foundations of life. But he gave me the keys. He told me where they were at. And once I began to study the Bible later in life, it didn't happen right away because I left there disappointed and hurt. I began to understand, wow, my grandfather really did give me the key to understand relationship, families, any type of situation in life, you can understand it. Well, being a grandparent, I want to make sure that I am able to help my grandkids. I work with my kids every day. I pray for them every day. I talk to them when they're available. Shout out to the twins because today is their birthday. And I talk to them, encourage them, to lift them up, to keep them encouraged. That's what family's supposed to do. Now, we don't have Sunday dinners anymore because my kids live in different places. They're not in the same place. I'm in Chicago. I got my oldest daughter in New Orleans with her kids. I have my son, my youngest son, one of the twins, living outside of the suburbs of Nashville. His sister's in the outside area of Nashville. But I communicate with them and I keep them lifted up and encouraged because I'm standing on the foundation of my grandparents. I'm standing on what they imparted into me. So I would say if you were to go into marriage in this day and age, 2022, understand that you got to reach back. Now, I know I hear the stories all the time. Well, that's way back then. That's not that ain't that things have changed. It ain't the same. And you're right. Things have changed. People don't see commitment in relationship the same now as they did then. People don't understand what you can benefit from looking at what made them a successful marriage and duplicate that in this day and age. Sometimes it ain't about you. Sometimes you just have to sacrifice. I know a couple that was married for 70 years. They both lived to be 100 years old. And the woman passed away before the man did. And he cried like a baby because he had been with that woman as long as he was, and he couldn't imagine not living a day with her. This woman would get up every day before daylight and go put on makeup on her face so that she would be presentable for her husband when he woke up. And every time he woke up, he would look at the same image of this woman every day that he married and the beauty that she represented towards him. Now, young people today willing to do that type of, work to keep interest in their marriage? No, they don't, because it is work to be able to establish a positive, uplifting relationship with family, okay, for family. They need to see it. I saw my grandparents together. Are young people today seeing their grandparents together and what the benefits of seeing them together? So, unfortunately, the answer to the question is no. Marriage today is not the same as it was in our grandparents' day. Should it be? Yes. We should reach back and grab hold of what our grandparents used as a success story and allow it to be your part of your success story. If you're going to be with someone, be with someone. People make mistakes. People make mistakes. As long and you hear stories over the generations and over the decades that someone was married to a woman and then he left to go get a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk and he never came back. Okay? That's a story that I've heard far too often. So the woman is left raising the kids, and she has struggled and struggled and struggled, and he's out, sowing his wild oats, enjoying life because he didn't like the life that he had anymore, and he ran out on it. So that's a failed story. But there are so many more stories that are success stories. And I encourage you to reach back and grab a success story. Grandparents, great grandparents, there's somebody that you have seen growing up. The reason why they were the success story that they were is because of what their foundation was that was put into them, and they tried to pass it on to you. So I would say, if you're not willing to be with someone and commit with them no matter what, when you take those vows for sickness and health, and all of the other words of commitment that you make to one another, good times and bad times, then I would say you're probably not supposed to be with that person. If you can look at them and say, I ain't gonna do what he say do, then you might not need to be with that person. But if you are thinking about it and you want to know what a success story looks like in marriage, look back to the elders, to the foundation of the family, and duplicate what you've seen. You don't need to recreate the wheel. The wheel was already a success story. All you got to do is duplicate it. And you too can have what your grandparents had, which was a very successful marriage. So that's it for today. I'm not going to continue going on and on. I want to thank you all for tuning in and checking out the question of the day. If you would like to send in a question, please go over to my website, ask-dr-ron.com. Please, send us your contact information with your question. We'll be putting more and more questions up each and every week. We'll be answering them from the desk of Dr. Ron. I hope you enjoyed the information that I put out today. I hope it touches your heart and you're able to take this information and use it. Don't let somebody else tell you what your marriage should be like. You should be able to look at your foundation, your family foundation, and build off of that. Recreate a success story. Okay? I'm going to say that again. Recreate a success story. So if you want to give us reach out and we'll give you a shout out when your question comes up. I can't remember right now who sent this question in, but thank you for your question. I think it was a good one to start this endeavor off with, and I appreciate it. We're gonna, put some other information up on the screen. I want to invite you guys to come join us on Street News Now each and every Thursday. Each and every Thursday from 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on YouTube and Facebook. Also, you can join me on Facebook each and every Tuesday. We do a show each and every Tuesday live on Facebook, the Ask Dr. Ron show, where we have guests. You can also make donations and contributions. Please join me. Go over to my website, ask-dr-ron.com. Support us. All the people that have supported us and all the things that we have done, we thank you. This is our donation information. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please like and share. Tell somebody about the show. We're just getting started here, so we appreciate you guys. Come back and see us on next week. Peace and love.